Hey, everybody, welcome to a special episode of Across the Pitch on the AAT Sports Network. My name is Mike Barrera. I'll be one of your co hosts today. If you've never watched us before, I appreciate you hopping on and listening to our conversation. We are a group that covers the Philadelphia Union as well as some Philadelphia Union too. Uh, Myself would I typically do a post game show after every single Union match. Jose Nunez typically joins me as well, but you can also find his coverage on MLS on MLSsoccer.com. So if you enjoy soccer, if you enjoy the Union, I think you're in the right place here. But we have a special guest today. His name is Ray Dunne from 97.5 The Fanatic. Ray, first of all, really thank you again for taking time to speak with us. But share some of your background and your sports background and how you kind of got into broadcasting.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky, and I appreciate you guys having me. This is exciting to get a chance to sit down, talk with you guys, talk a little union, talk a little just about everything. Um, for me, I always wanted to get into this. This was something I wanted to do since I was very young, so I definitely had the benefit, or at least the head start, of just knowing, hey, that's the career path I want to go down. I see people talking sports, and I think I liken it to watching Phillies games growing up, being like, wow, they get to talk about the game. That's super cool. And after a while, you realize that I'm not hitting the ball over the fence, so I'm probably not going to end up on that field. So I might as well stick around and try and do something in sports. And from that point, that kind of took me to get involved. I was very lucky to go to a high school that had a really good program for it, and then get to Temple. And Temple, we could spend 3 hours talking about everything Temple's done for me, and I'm still doing with Temple. But getting there, and Andrew Salchunas was a big part of my journey. He was a morning show host here at the Fanatic, who was at the time the middays producer. We got connected through a mentorship program, and he helped get me in the door at the Fanatic. And I celebrated 3 years at the Fanatic, like a couple weeks ago. So a lot's happened in those 3 years. So there are a lot of moving parts in the 3 years, but it's been a really, really cool journey, and it's been something that's allowed me to stay home and stay. I'm from Montgomery County. I grew up in Oaks. Best thing that people know Oaks for is the convention center. If you don't know the convention center, then we're near Norristown. That's the best way I can describe it to you. 422. That's the way I can describe it to you. But yeah, so that's a little bit of my background. I do stuff with the Fanatic, obviously. Right now, hosting the midday show. In the interim here, and call games for Temple women's basketball on radio. Call games for Temple men's basketball on ESPN Plus. Both their soccer programs on ESPN Plus. I do as many games as I can there. And then any other gig that surrounds this area that someone calls me to do, I do, which includes filling in for Dave whenever the union decide that they need someone. When Dave has something else going on, when they need someone, I've been lucky enough. They've given me the call now 3 times to do that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And what a perfect segue. Almost like you planned it, right? But Ray, I want to hear about sort of your relationship with Dave. I think Mike and I, it's fair for us to say that Dave has been incredibly welcoming to people like Mike and myself in terms of newer on the block, and he probably does it cyclical, right? In terms of new people who are coming to cover the team, maybe people exit, people coming to cover a team again, etc. Since it is very much like a hobby type of thing, but we're fortunate enough that we do it well enough that people choose to support us in a variety of ways. But your relationship with Dave, what is that like? Obviously, probably learning from one of the best. I mean, to me, it's still amazing that I can turn on Sirius and whatnot and listen to Dave call the U.S. Open, which is an incredible thing, right? Like, I shook this man's hand, right? To me, it's like one of those moments where you sort of want to scream out of the top of the rooftops and be like, I know that guy, right? But like, what is that relationship like with Dave and sort of like learning moments that you've had with him?
It's fantastic. I mean, Dave, I'll take you back during the pandemic. Dave did these seminars over Zoom, and he would, go into his industry contacts, and he would reach out to, big time broadcasters, big time people in sports media. And he had, 50, 100 people on these Zooms, learning about the industry. And it was at a time where, I'm sitting in my parents' house in college, like I'm getting no real world experience. I'm getting like zero, like, this stinks. That summer, I was supposed to go to Japan with Temple for the Olympics that year. Like, I was in the whole, like, this sucks. And Dave's running these, seminars. And that was kind of my real world, like, college experience that I was able to pick up because you just learn from all these people. And Dave set up those seminars. So that kind of was the beginning of, forming some sort of a relationship with Dave of like, okay, here's this guy that's doing his absolute most for all these people throughout the pandemic to try and make the most of, just a tough situation. Those seminars, just people talking, getting to know one another and getting great advice from some of the best people in the industry while, we had no or very limited sports at the time. And that relationship kind of grew to, he was doing a lot of Temple stuff while I was, he still does plenty of college basketball. He was doing some of the football stuff while I was still at Temple. And we run into each other here, there, and get to know one another. And like you said, you kind of nailed it there with the, like, I'd see him be like, yeah, like he's on TV, like, oh, Dave, like, like, I love that guy, like, it was like, yeah, he's giving me the time of day, like that. It's a cool feeling. And I think he does do a really good job of making people feel like they're worth $1 million. Like, you never feel like you get cheated of an interaction with Dave, which is one of the super cool things about him. And I think for him being the voice of a team, I think is one of the best things about him. Like, you feel important, you feel energized anytime you get into a room with him. And that's just an incredible attribute for a human being to have, regardless of what they do, but especially for what he does. So yeah, we kind of had that. I saw his progression career-wise happening as I was starting to try and build myself a career. And it's like, well, if I can, figure it out the way he has in this area, being from this area, that would be a good thing. And so we kept in decent touch throughout the year, running into one another, talking, at press boxes, regardless games that he was calling. So we'd run into each other, but it really, our relationship, I feel like our dynamic now has taken a whole nother step forward, just given the fact that I've done these games now, and, obviously the games are on the Fanatic, so it gives us a lot closer, connection with one another. But like, I love personally, sometimes, like, before I call a game, I try to come to the game before the game I call and, like, sit in the booth with him, listen to the full 90 with him. And I love seeing the way he preps, like, just the level of preparation and what he does, the detail that he has. And I love the way that he is able to talk with listeners instead of talking at listeners. I think he does a really good job at just making the game a conversation while the game's happening. And I think you just study so much of what he's doing to try and make yourself better. So it's a very long answer to say that I admire the absolute hell out of that guy. And I'm very lucky to have the working relationship that I do with him.
I guess I want to, if we're going to continue the Dave Leno train here a little bit, I think that there is such a thing as copying and adapting and making it your own. And I would think, because obviously I have no experience, I was very close to doing it for the Club World Cup, but I wasn't called upon to do play-by-play commentary in Spanish, which would have been an awesome experience. But I just, I was a substitute type of person. But I would think that in your role, I think about all the people that Dave learned from, right? With a legend, two legends in Tommy Smith and JP De La Camera, right? And I'm guessing that Dave was severely influenced by those two and the way that he leverages his voice and the way that he calls things and the way that he interacts on the radio and with Sebastian, etc. What I'm trying to ask in a very long-winded way, and I apologize, I want to make sure I give you the full context of my question, is how do you go about piecing all of these different influences into the voice that is your own? Because to me, that feels like it's an art.
Yeah, no, and I would say very clearly up front, before the first game that I did for the Union, like, I was like, I want you all to realize I'm not Dave. Like, Dave has a very, very special level in which he can reach in terms of excitement, a very special level he's already reached in terms of just talent, that, I'm still growing into. And I think there's like, if I tried to be Dave, it would come across as a guy trying to be Dave instead of being himself. So I think that's one of the biggest things I've taken from Dave. When you're listening to Dave Leno, because he's so authentically him. Like, you are like, yes, this is a Dave Leno production. And you can hear it, and it's so great. And like, that's something that I've taken from him. But also just, stylistically, all right, how often is he describing the action versus getting a comment from Seba? How are you lining that one up? If he sees something, how much of it is his analysis, or is he trying to tie that back to something that Seba said to set up another talking point for them to go back and forth about? What points on the field is he stepping back and letting the game breathe, or what points is he trying to make sure, hey, action's happening that could set up something important in the story of this game? So it's taking all mental notes, and I'll be honest with you, I call it like my Soccer for Dummies week, the week leading into doing Union games, because I'm a psycho. Like when it comes to these things, like I have, and you can go ask Kyle Morello, who was their broadcast manager. You can ask Matt Menard, who produces the games back here for the Fanatic. I am grabbing as much audio from previous games as I possibly can, and I'm taking down notes on storylines. I'm taking down notes on just the way Dave delivers things, taking notes on what, I've worked now 3 times with Sebastian. So it's usually what Sebastian's fascinated by throughout the game. And so regardless of whether or not I'm watching, whether or not I'm listening in the moment, or if I'm going back and listening, or if I'm in the booth with him, I'm always making a mental note of what Dave's doing because I understand the legends he learned from, and now he's kind of building his own coaching tree here where it's like, hey, I'm filling in for you, and I'm going to take every bit of knowledge that you have and also every bit of information that you put out there that you don't realize you're giving me. I'm taking from you, and I'm going to make sure that I can put my own spin on it. Because again, you're not trying to be Dave, because if I try and be Dave on a broadcast, I'm going to sound like a Conklin bit, trying to call a soccer game. Like it just doesn't work that way. So I think it's just about taking all the information and all the preparation and all the style that he has in doing something at a very high level and saying, okay, this is how it's done at a high level for Dave Leno. How can it be done at a high level for Ray Dunne?
That's awesome. My goodness. I didn't expect that type of answer, but it totally makes sense, right? Because you want to be original to yourself.
Yeah.
Though I think my follow-up question to that, and to give you some more context too, my dad's a chef, right? He is an incredible cook. And Mike, I swear I'm going somewhere with this, so hang tight. But he's an incredible cook. I grew up eating very, very well all of my life. All of my life, I've also hated going to restaurants with him because he thinks he can do it better than the next person. So my question to you is, how often do you sit and being surrounded by sports and competitiveness, how often do you watch these streams or you listen to some folks and you does something ever come in your ear like, I could do that so much better. I don't know what this person's thinking or what the hell they're doing, but I can do that better. Does that ever cross your mind? And I'm not trying to put you on a spot. It's just something I'm genuinely curious about.
So I think the only time I like to joke with people, when I'm upset at a team I root for, when I turn on the commentators. Like when I start to make comments about them, like, oh really? You really think that? Like that's because I'm actually more upset at what's happening on the field than I am with the commentator or someone calling a game. And I think that it's been a level of maturing for me personally where I realized this person is doing it their way. And this is the way that and I can understand how they got to delivering the game content that way, or how they got to, doing the play-by-play in that regard. I will say that every time I show up to that booth for the Union, I know damn well I'm no Dave Leno. And that's there will never be a question in that. But in the general sense of seeing people do other things, watching a college basketball game and knowing how many college basketball games I do, sure, there's things that you nitpick and that you're thinking, but I try and collect my general disposition, whether it be, doing sports talk radio, whether it be, just in life, is okay. How is someone taking care of their business in this regard? And what can I take from that to make myself better? So I've found myself now more when I watch games, and especially because I've done a lot of college basketball and I'm doing quite a bit of soccer now at this point. Okay, what are they doing that's working for them? Also, what are they doing what's not working for them? And taking both those things and applying it to myself. So I never want to be, I try not to be the guy sitting on the couch like I could do your job. I do. I'm just like anyone else though, where when I say something sitting on the couch and they inevitably say the same thing 5 seconds later, I'm like, I'm in the right industry. I know my stuff on this one. I should be doing it. So I try not to be I could do your job, but we're all human. Come on. Every once in a while, you're sitting there like, yeah, come on. My analysis works too.
That cracks me up, Ray, and Mike, you'll appreciate this too, because I remember being in an instance where I think it was after an Alabama loss. We were at a family member's house or something like that, and they wanted to just watch the coach that replaced Saban. I forget his name anymore. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, what are the questions I would ask? And I just started spewing them out to my friends and family members that were there. And the next 3 or 4 questions that were asked were exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, maybe I do know what I'm doing, even though this is a side gig, right? Like it sort of just like clicks in your head.
But that's exactly it. And that's like, to me, it's like, okay, I watched this big play happen in college basketball. It's like, okay, how would I have delivered that action? How would I have paid off that moment? And it's like, okay, how did they pay off that moment? Did that work for them? Did that not work for them? Like, it's a mental note, Dave setting up this big corner, and like, how does he deliver the action? Okay, how did he pace that? How did he set it up? How did he pay it off? And it's like, that pay again, dude, a Dave goal call. Like, yeah, I'm almost like, hey man, I'll do the rest of the game if you just want to just hit that goal call. Like, like that to me, like what you're saying, like sitting there at home, that's 100% what you do. Like, that's because it's like, and I think that's good validation for anyone in whatever path they're in. Like, yeah, I know what I'm doing because, yeah, okay, all those questions, that's what I was going to ask. All that analysis you just gave, that was the analysis I was going to give. And then sometimes you catch yourself with, ooh, that was a really good point. I'm going to write that one down. I'm going to have that one for the next time because I didn't think of that. So yeah, I think we're one and the same in that one.
I feel like, and you might maybe Oscar Budehen, who does the Spanish play-by-play. I feel like Dave's goal celebrations are starting to become almost as equal as in terms of notoriety as Oscar's campanazos whenever there's a home run. I'm starting to feel like there's like some sort of parody here in terms of like, okay, I recognize a Dave call, certainly recognize an Oscar Budehen call, who's a dear friend of ours as well. So I guess the next question, Ray, I wanted to have before I turn it over to Mike, and this is not to put anybody in the spot or to make it difficult for you, but I'm really intrigued considering the connection between certainly the union community and Dave, but also the U.S. Open. And I'm not sure, I haven't talked to Dave, but I'm intrigued. There was that report, obviously, of like a lot of people unhappy of a political figure going to the final. I think you can read between the lines who it might be.
Yeah.
And ultimately asking broadcasters, I don't know if that was radio as well, but certainly for the TV broadcasters specifically, to maybe alter their broadcasts or alter their talking points leading into the moments where it would be most audible that this person's there. I'm intrigued on your thoughts on that, and whether that would ever filter out to you. How would you handle that? Because I think it's genuinely something that's interesting, and I'll never say unprecedented, but it certainly feels like the first time I've heard about something like that in a long time.
Yeah, I think in that situation, are you there to document the moment? Or are you there to editorialize? I think that's a big thing for the broadcaster. And like, I don't know necessarily whether they wanted the broadcasters not to mention or they wanted the broadcast not to show it. Like that level of censorship, like, I think you should be there to capture the moment. I think you should be there to be able to say, hey, this person's here. Jumping into editorializing about how you feel about that person being there, how you feel, I think that's where you can start to, kind of bleed the lines of, okay, what is the purpose of a broadcaster in this moment? And, I think that goes across political figures. It goes across, like just in general, like the different political ideologies that might pop up. Like, I think that's something that they should be able to show. They should be able to acknowledge that person's there. And I think they should be able to show the reaction. Like, and I think that's just point blank. Like, when we see Army, Navy, at the end of a year, they're going to mention that, president's there, or if another political figure's there, they're going to show the reaction. They're going to, I think that's it. Different crowds are going to have different reactions to different political figures, different crowds, and I think that because that's the case, there's maybe not a one size fits all, but I'm always more capture the moment in history because that's ultimately the media's job. If you want to stop the line at editorializing because, hey, we're about to go play tennis, like that's fine. All right. But show the moment and let the moment be what the moment is. You're there for the moment. Hey, this was the reaction. Let's go out there and serve. Let's get to the action. I think that's the way I come down. I don't think you should be censoring who appears and what the reaction to those people appearing is. I just think the further point of editorializing is more on the broadcaster. If it's expected from them, if that's their style, if they've earned that level of this industry, okay. I would say for a lot of people that ultimately, they don't end up getting to that level of, hey, yeah, we want you to editorialize on what's happening right here. I think it's more about capturing the moment, capturing the reaction, and pushing on.
Which I certainly appreciate, because I feel like that's missing quite a bit, not just in obviously I don't know what the term would be, but like talking press, right? Radio, certainly visual press. I think it's also missing, but certainly through written press, where I know I've often caught myself sort of, well, is this really the facts? Is this the who, what, where, when, or is this my opinion as well? And the reality is, no one wants my opinion. In reality, they just want to know what's happening, right? And let
Right.
them make the decision, which I think is, even in sports, is missing quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think that, but like that's again, that's a stylistic, that's an again more editorialized. That's more of an opinion. Are you writing the story of the game? Or are you writing the opinion of something that happened at the game? There's the column, and then there's the game story, and I think that also applies here to the broadcast medium, where you can give us the game story or you can give us the column on it, and that's just the way I differentiate the two.
Absolutely. Listen, Ray, and I know you did some coverage for Union. Obviously, you do play-by-play for basketball. One of the questions I had, and Jose knows I'm a big basketball guy, so I have to ask this. How do you feel comparing the two sports? Do you see any similarities between basketball and soccer? Because for me personally, as someone who's basketball first, I do see similarities that I think are the reasons why I fell in love with soccer so quickly.
I mean, strategically, like the goal that you're going up the floor, going up the pitch, basically what you're trying to do is strategically get the ball from one place to another into space to create an opportunity for you to score. Now it happens at a different pacing in both games, but I think that's a similarity I see with the two. I think it's a game that isn't necessarily based solely on physicality, but allows, like, the physical moments allow you to build into what you end up getting to. You're going to get a foul whistle both sides. So I think there's similarities in the way the games build and the way the games happen. That condensed action for basketball allows for obviously more scoring, allows for, a different, I guess, for me, the pacing of the broadcast is different. So if we're going to the broadcasting aspect of this, the pacing of it is different. But in terms of the way the games are built, if you want to just say aliens come down and watch, like, hey, yeah, I could put together one and one and see how there is a similarity between the two there. I'm curious to get your perspective on what the similarities are, whether you feel what I'm going with is where your line of thinking was, or if maybe you were looking at this a different way.
Spacing was the first thing I thought of. Actually, specifically with that movement off the ball. I think you're
Yeah.
used typically for a normal sports fan. They look at where's the ball at. Is it the football in the quarterback's hand? It's in the point guard's hand. It's at the striker's feet. Whatever. I think when you're watching sports and as you learn the game more, you begin to watch the players away from the ball. And for me in particular, basketball is so much about off-ball moving. You think of the Spurs and the way they moved the ball back in the early 2000s. How the game has grown with the three-point line. All this off-the-ball movement is really important. So when I look at when I watch soccer, I'm trying to train my eye now to see where's Michael Uwa going when
Yep.
Indy Vasilov has the ball. It's one of those things that I really admire about the sport, I guess you could say, the off the ball movement. And I think that's one of the biggest similarities that people don't necessarily always see, but if they appreciated it and looked out for it, I think they would love soccer much more than, unfortunately, not enough people do. But again, you do play by play for Temple basketball. I believe you do both men and women, correct?
Yes.
So
Women's games, all of them on the radio, and then the men's games, the home ones on ESPN Plus.
awesome. So give us a little outlook into in Temple basketball, both men and women's side. It's I think the women finished fourth in the AAC recently. I know men's has had a tough turnaround over the years after McKee left, and now Adam Fisher is the coach. What is your outlook on these two sides?
Yeah, I mean the women, it's back to back 20-win seasons. So obviously, and I work very closely with that program. I'm actually trying to right now reach in my bag and find the regular season. So yeah, here. This is my flex on the. This is got a little
Oh, look at that!
Championship ring from 2 years ago.
That's awesome.
And yeah, so to start with the program I work closer with, there was definitely after this year losing Tiara East, Tariana Gary, who were two senior captains, leaders. East, I would remark as an all-time Temple Owl just because coaching staff was gone after her freshman year. She stuck around. She played tremendous her junior year to the point where there were definitely people interested in taking her away. And she spent all 4 years at Temple, which I think is just, 1,000-point scorer, 4-year player. at one institution, and an institution that is, in the American and not necessarily at the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten level. That's going to be rare going forward. And I think that she deserves all the credit in the world for the leader that she was, the player that she was for Temple. And then Terriana Gary is one of the best 3-point shooters that the program's ever seen. So replacing the two of them is going to be tough.
Sure.
The good news is this team bought in the way that they didn't hit the portal. Tristan Taylor, starting point guard, going to be back. Kayla Turner was the sixth player of the year in the American. She's back. Jaleesa Molina was averaging darn near a double-double through all of conference play, and she's back. So they return a lot of the key pieces. They've made some very interesting additions to the portal, picking up a player that was top 10 in rebounding nationally last year. They go in, now they've got a young nucleus, Savannah Curry, Drew Alexander, the type of players that are going to kind of fit into the role that Terriana Gary left. So I also love, selfishly, Savannah Curry being able to shoot, being able to say Curry for 3 on a broadcast. Kind of rock.
Can't beat that, right?
And then Coach Rich, just Diane Richardson I tell people all the time, I went to Temple for 4 years undergrad. Now 3 years, three seasons, 3 years I've worked with this program. I feel like it's been a grad degree in just leadership and just watching her operate as a leader and watching her, just the way she treats people, the way she kind of handles the business from top down with this team is really impressive. So I got nothing but glowing things to say. It'll be tough to replace the production from last year, but if I know anyone, they're going to be able to do it. And then to the men's side of things, I liked what they did in the portal. I think it is an interesting world to exist in now with NIL, with the portal, with the way everything goes. I know that the program itself definitely had loftier goals than what they got to last year. It was a shame to see Jamal Mashburn Jr. sidelined as long as he was towards the end of that season. And then to see the number of guys that obviously, choose to move on and go find, another place. I have a tough time begrudging 18, 19, 20-year-old kids for, going to get theirs. That's just me, just knowing that if I was 20 and someone came up to me and said, hey, you got this, or, hey, if you go in here, you could potentially get this. Like, I get it. Yeah. But I thought they did a solid job. I was excited about, Spencer Mahoney, bringing him in. I thought just the experience of obviously playing at Cal. Just, again, they brought in guys, Darian Ford, that have played kind of big places. Jordan Mason is another guy that I was really, really excited to see them bring on. So I think that they did a lot in the portal in just addressing, bringing in guys that have pedigree that maybe haven't found it somewhere else, but get them on the floor together, give them the opportunity to play with one another, and let them go after it. And I thought the fact that Aiden Tobiasen is still here and still at Temple is a big deal because I liked him a lot as a freshman. I love there's a great story about I believe it was his mom that set up mirrors in the house to basically preach accountability. Like, you look in the mirror and like, this is, you basically, you come face to face with yourself. I forget the exact, it was in the Inquirer. John Zwizlak wrote it, who just graduated from Temple this past year. It was a great story about just accountability and, basically you're the one, your work is going to get you where you go, and you could see it in his game. So him, Duradola still being there, who I thought had a solid freshman year. I like what they have to build. Obviously, when I'm talking about so many portal additions, it all has to make itself out there on the court. But sure. I thought Fisher and crew did a pretty good job of attacking the portal, and I'm excited. I'm excited for what I'm going to get to call come this winter. Certainly, of all the Big Five schools, maybe one of the more tame off seasons, given the fact that 3 replaced coaches right after the season, and another one had to replace a coach this week.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head with coaching. You think of Temple, you think Chaney, Dunphy, even McKee, had some bright moments there, and it's fallen pretty far from where it was when Jose and I were teenagers, young adults watching that pretty solid basketball. I covered the Big East. I watch the Big East a lot. I think of St. John's, how they have been basically irrelevant for years, and then all of a sudden Rick Pitino goes in there, and suddenly they're a powerhouse and they're a national title contender. It's fascinating what a coach can do, and I think when you have such a volatile era with the portal, with NIL, with kids leaving literally every other year to go to a different school, the coach is almost the biggest factor there. A program like Temple, like St. John's, that has a strong history, just going for it and getting a big name. I mean, I don't know if Adam Fisher is considered a big name. I mean, I know he's done work with PSU and Miami, but he's certainly an up and coming coach. I mean, I know you talked about the women's coach. I believe her name is Diane Richardson on her impact. What have you seen just from being so close on Adam Fisher's role with these again young men who have every right to leave after the season's over?
He's got the energy, and I think that's
Yeah.
that's what it takes. I mean, you're seeing so many. You talk about big names. The big names of this sport have, in a large part, chosen to move on.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just takes an energy right now to deal with all this, and he just has this relentless energy about him to continue to, hey, what can we do to put ourselves in a better position tomorrow? What can we do to put ourselves in a better position? I think that those things are starting to take root, and I think you see with that freshman class that he gets for year 2 last season. The fact that again Duradola, the fact that Tobiason's still here, like you see some of that starting to take root with, hey, if we buy in here, we're going to get our opportunities, and we're also going to again just be able to build here. So I think his energy, and then just he kind of. I feel like we do this a lot in Philadelphia as like, oh, this person just gets it because they're from here. But he
Right.
is a guy that is local and like kind of just understands the landscape and what Temple's been. And like it's tough, but you see they get the commitment this week from a kid from Father Judge, whose name just slipped my brain as we're having this conversation. But a 3-star in the city that's going to Temple. Like they're like that to me, understanding that when Temple's at its peak, that's what it can do. It can bring in talent in the city, and it's not that previous regimes haven't, because McKee did it. I thought had some really good work in terms of trying to bring in guys from around here. You think back Hicks, Stanford, I think was originally a McKee guy when he signed. Like those, it's not that it's unique, but seeing that he's able to get that done in year 3, get that verbal commit, that type of stuff to me is really cool to see. I just think his energy about it, and he wants this bad, and he knows what it takes to succeed at Temple. He's seen, the energy. He's also seen what it takes to succeed in college basketball, given all the places he's worked and all the success he's come from.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say that I don't know if this is the window to make a name for yourself in the Big Five and the Philly schools, but you kind of alluded to a few minutes ago. Billy Lang takes the player development job with the New York Knicks. He leaves St. Joe's. Kyle Neptune was a disaster, for lack of a better phrase, for Villanova, considering where they were just 5 or 6 years ago with Jay Wright. And now you have Kevin Willard from Maryland taking over for Nova. So this feels like an opportunity for Temple to you know, be get into the spotlight of Philly basketball. And like you mentioned as well, I know Philadelphia is a football town, but it is at its core a basketball city. It always has been. There's been so many great players that came from Philadelphia, and even in today's NBA, you can see so many great ties to Philadelphia. So it certainly feels like Adam Fisher has a chance to take the city by storm, I guess you could say, especially in Big Five matchups. Would you agree with that? This is kind of a great window for him to maybe pull some people who would typically go to Nova or St. Joe's.
I mean, I think it's a great window for him in a lot of respects. I mean, given the Big Five and given the changes that we saw at St. Joe's and just the changes overall, Willard, what they're doing at Villanova, like in today's reality, tough to compete with that. But you have to, and I think what they did in the portal puts them in a good position to try and do that. And I also look at it as you've got a window to compete in the American. Like there are, you have Memphis, but you also look at some of these good programs are cyclical, and like you find that cycle, and then once you ride that wave up, you just try and stabilize, and you try and keep yourself there, and you try and build that back. And I think the opportunity, if you're able to build yourself to the top of a conference, that gives you the ability then to come back and compete with Villanova, because that's basically been the program. And I think you saw that with St. Joe's. They had the talent, but they thought they were going to be top of that A10, and they made some runs in that A10 tournaments to get close, to try and get over that hump, and they just ultimately didn't. But once they did that, they start they're winning Big Five titles. If you can stabilize yourself to the top of one of these conferences, you're going to be able to compete in the Big Five. And that doesn't guarantee you anything in the Big Five, because we all know Big Five game can go any way you want. Like it's the nature of it. But I think that's the way for them, and I'm excited. I think that he's got some really good ideas, and I think they've done a pretty good job. So I'll be interested to see the way this season goes.
Yeah, I think we saw that with Nova this past year, if not the year before, with Big Five losing games against Drexel. I think they might have lost to even St. Joe's or another school that they typically wouldn't have lost
Right.
under Jay Wright. And it's fascinating to see the development here. And yeah, like I said, I'm looking forward to the college basketball season. And I think it starts November, right? Early November for you.
November 3rd, man.
November
Get you
3rd.
mark your calendars. We're ready to go.
Get our tickets for the Leocourt Center, and if
Right.
I do swing by, I'll hopefully come say hi and watch a basketball game out there. But Ray, again, thank you so much for joining us on this busy day. If you want to kind of share your work, what have you been up to? Where can people find you if they don't follow you already? And just kind of plug away.
Before
Yeah.
we exit, I actually have two more questions, super quick.
Sure.
If Ray, you can
I'm
humor
all
me.
good. Keep on.
Um, to bring it back to soccer for a minute, b- big events all around next year, right? And in the city of Philadelphia specifically. Would love your thoughts. Do you think the city's ready for the World Cup and what's happening? Because I feel like that's some 5 for 5s will say that that's the least important thing happening, but the reality is that like that is, I think the World Cup, even if it's a couple of group stage matches, a quarterfinal, it's probably the biggest thing that has happened over the past decade or so, if not longer than that. I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts on the readiness of the city for this.
Yeah. I don't think anyone that pays attention to sports should say that that would be the least of things going on next year. You bring the World Cup here, that's a massive, massive undertaking and a massive deal. In terms of being ready, let's get that public transportation in order. All right, let's make sure that's all figured out. Let's have that ironed down, taken care of. That's big. And I think from that perspective, like the city being ready for it, in terms of the people of this city, we're going to be ready for it. I think that we will meet the moment as a host city for this. I mean, you think about just the number of soccer bars that there are across the city of Philadelphia. I could tell you that I have friends that right now have been trying for the past like 4 or 5 weekends to figure out a time to go down to Fido, get mimosas, and watch some soccer on a Saturday morning. Like we've been trying since it's been a couple weeks now where people have been trying to get that done. So like, and that goes across the city. So there's plenty of places for people to enjoy and that revel in and that can kind of welcome in a maybe non-soccer native fan to at least the soccer atmosphere and understand what's going on. And I think in that case, you have such a, two of you are a great example of this. There are so many people in this city that are so well versed in the sport and so well versed in just, again, what it's going to be next year that you're going to be able to welcome people in. And the people, listen, Philadelphians love a good time. Like we love a good time around sports. I think if you see the World Cups here, you're going to want to be a part of the action. We're not going to want to stay home like, oh, yeah, go. You go take that world attention and you keep it to yourself. So I think in that case, I think the city's ready. If you want to talk about planning and all that stuff, man, I just hope public transit's ready. I hope people realize just what it's going to mean to have it here in terms of like just how crowded it's going to be. How, if you want a hotel room for your weekend getaway to Philadelphia next year in the summer, I think you probably should have booked 6 months ago. Like that type of thing. But I think the city's going to be ready for it. I'm excited to see the city meet the moment and get a chance to be, listen, I work on radio, so, I like to be the center of attention just a little bit. I think I'm excited for the city to be the center of attention.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued if any of the radio stations, and this is not for me to like ask you to divulge any plans if there's any at all, but like I'm intrigued. Like, what is the local media attention going to be for something like that? Obviously, there's bidding and there's winning contracts, etc., and whatnot. But I think, and it feels like such a missed opportunity that some of these other news outlets uh, don't really pay attention. I know we have our friend over at 69 News. I know we have you, Ray, and Dave specifically. I know Oscar pays attention because obviously he's Latino like myself and he grew up with the sport. But I'm really intrigued onto what is the appetite from the local media to actually want to get involved, and if this is going to be the hottest flash of the pan, right? Because there was little to no attention on something that should have been, guess I wouldn't say equally as big, but like the Club World Cup, there was very little attention outside of they changed the grass at the link, right? Or they set off smoke bombs in the one section of, or flares, I should say, of the
Yeah.
one section of the link. So like beyond that, like there was very little whatsoever, and that to me was actually pretty disappointing.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally get that from your perspective, and I know anyone they'll talk to you about sports talk radio, tell you listenership umbrella and what fits under the biggest umbrella. Why do we talk about Jalen Hurts 365 days a year? And I think like, listen, what am I gonna do? Lie to you right here? Am I? Well, actually, like you get it. I think it'll be interesting in the way we go about talking about it, because there is something so talkable about a shared experience.
Mm-hmm.
And like this can be a real moment where it's a shared experience of a sport that we have in town. And can you use this momentum of this? Because like you're telling me people aren't going to watch the World Cup? Like people watch the World Cup. We know that. Like, so it'll be something we can talk about, but then can you use it as a launching pad of like, oh, by the way, there is something that people are passionate about here. And like, I've said this a few times. Like my attention span for soccer is higher than my attention span for hockey. Like that's but both, like when we talk about the grand lexicon of what we talk about in sports talk radio, both those sports fall to the side of what football is and what a good Phillies team is. And when the Sixers are going right now, I think everyone's trying to avoid just having any conversation about that right now. But hey, listen, I saw that video. and Embiid didn't have a brace on. He knocked down that jumper.
Let's get hyped up.
But back to the point at hand, like I think we talk so much about like it is formulaic in terms of football. But I think with the current event, it being here and it being something that people are going to have a lot of eyes on, I would hope that we can also turn this into a moment where it's not just, hey, wow, look, they had a lot of fun out there, right? Did you enjoy the World Cup? To, wow, did you see that game? What did you like about that game? What are you seeing in that? Like, I would hope that that's where this conversation goes. And I can tell you from my perspective, it's funny we had this today because I got pulled into an office this morning and it was like, hey, you have any interest in preliminary conversations about what's going to happen next summer? And I was like, of course. Like that's so like. I don't know what that's going to entail. I'm not going to tell you that we're going to have 4 hours just dedicated to breaking down the matchup down at the link, but I can tell you that there's conversations about how does an event of this magnitude work on radio? How do we talk about, how are we going to talk about on radio? How are we going to acknowledge it on radio? Especially because I think it comes at a specifically good time for something that's different than what we usually talk about. If you know what I'm saying, like that time frame of the season for baseball is like, oh, we're going to talk about the holes of this baseball team again today. And like, did you realize they need a bullpen arm? Oh, you didn't? Right. Give us a call. And it's like, oh, that's like, if there ever is a dead time for football, it's like, that's very much a dead time for the NFL where it's like, oh, today the person filling in for Colin Cowherd gave out their top 10 quarterbacks list and Jalen Hurts fell 9th on that list. Are you offended? Like, I think it does fit into like a very interesting time in the sports calendar that might allow for the air for it to breathe a little bit. And then you hope that it springboards into a bigger conversation about like, maybe it can take a little bit more of a chunk of a pie. It's all about growing. Like I would say, I think the Sixers were not necessarily as big of a sports talk radio topic until you got further close to the start of the 21st century and then beyond there. So it's not an overnight like change, but I think it's something that can gradually push you to the forefront of that's a big talkable point. And that's maybe a long way of answering of, I hope, like, I want to put plans in place for us to be a part of the action because I think it's going to be awesome. And I think the city's ready for it. But when you talk about people actually talking about it, it's going to come down to, all right, how best do we work with what's happening to make it both fit the medium and both meet the moment?
I just hope it's sorry, Mike.
No, it's okay. I was like, yeah, go ahead.
Mike,
okay. I was like, you bring up a great point about growth. And I think the weird parallel of 2022 and 2025 is the Union, Phillies, and Eagles were all really good at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And after the 2022 disappointing MLS Cup loss, I think collectively as Union fans, we said, crap, that was our window to take over some of the viewership in the city. And of course, the Apple deal, et cetera, kind of played into it a bit. But you talk about, again, growth. The Union had been around now for 15 some years. It has been a year by year, brick by brick establishment of making themselves known in the city, and the fact that Union are top in the MLS, top in supporter shield standings, that's massive for the World Cup next year, because maybe a few more people go to the games in Chester this year
Yeah.
because they're playing so well, and they're like, you know what, I'm going to turn the World Cup on this time because I actually am interested now in soccer. So I think the growth part of it, it's not just, oh, we got the cup, World Cup call, let's start getting ready now. No, it's years before that even allows you to get that bid to host some
Yeah.
game. Jose, go ahead there.
What I was gonna say is I'm just so happy that there are even thoughts between the four walls of your building that you're at right now. I think you're at the office,
I am. Yep.
but
Never
I'm
move.
just glad that there's conversations, and I guess B, happy to help in whatever way. I know Mike and I would love to help in whatever way because we just love this and we want to share this with people. I mean, we do it mostly for free, but honestly, like 99% for free. We'd love to do it. And then C, I hope that there's synergy, and I know this is like stars aligning, but when this draw happens, I hope that some of the teams that come to Philadelphia for group stage matches are, listen, like getting a Brazil would be a different world, of course, but like, God, like, please let it be, with all due respect, like, please don't let it be Cape Verde or like, like some
Yeah.
random nation. Like, I would still go and love it and enjoy it and pay to go or cover it or whatever. But like, in a perfect world, imagine a situation where it's Brazil and Germany playing in Philadelphia for a group stage game. Like, like, obviously, God, imagine if it happened, but like, if that happened, like, I can't even imagine the buzz that would happen. I mean, I think about 2023, whenever it was, that it was Mexico and Germany, and there was also a Phillies game happening at
Yep.
the same time.
Yeah.
Insane.
That was gridlock.
One of my favorite days in the tailgate lots. Let me tell you that.
Wow.
I
Okay.
was
You ate
loving
well, I'm sure.
I ate good. I drank good. It was a grand old time. And then the Phillies absolutely kicked the Diamondbacks' ass that night. I don't want to talk about the rest of the series, but that night specifically, going around to those tailgates, they knew how to get down. They knew how to party. And I was all about that evening down there at the Sports Complex. So I'm all in on that one. And I think but also like that experience. Like, because you think about what we're crazy about here. And there's so much of just the experience of being a fan. And I think that's one of the things that the Union have going for them is you go down there and you get to experience that day, whether, you're down at Union Yards, whether you're down, at the Sons of Ben's tailgate, or even you're just tailgating on your own down there. There is a game day experience. Once you get to experience that, that does a lot for you. And I think there are so many people that if they get to experience a little bit of like, oh, this is what big time soccer is. Like this is what, can we replicate something like that? Like that's like, you got people tailgating freaking preseason Eagles games. Like, like because it's all about the replicating in their mind what's about to come in football season. So like, I think we are an experience based, humans, we're tribal. I think if we find a way that people see this and say, oh, we can create something like this for ourselves and be a part of a group, I think that's really important. And I think that's all part of the growth. And you mentioned 2022, there could not have been a more ill-timed final than that one for just the nature of the talk, because Zach Wheeler being lifted in that sixth inning stole every bit of any reaction that you would have to what happened. It's a shame, but I mean that's just like, and it's the parallels again there right now. The Phillies look pretty good. They're really trying to get me to buy in. They're really doing a good job. I gotta give them
I
credit.
know.
And being around the Union as much as I am, now I'm doing the in booth producing for them for the games. So like I'm sitting there now next to Dave. I'm getting a great chance. Geez, front row to Dave. Like again, I'm taking notes. I'm studying.
That's awesome.
So like being around just the energy that they have right now, you feel good. Like I was there in Cincinnati for that game. You think the energy wasn't great? Like you got on that plane, like this is great. Life is good. So like that, seeing that energy and trying to take that and apply it to what we do, is something that, definitely we have to figure out. I think, again, we'll always talk umbrellas of like listenership and where it is. Once you building part of that umbrella, and I use the Sixers as the example because I think the Sixers were one that have like became a bigger slice of the pie as time went on. I think that that's a model to follow on this one, especially given the success of the organization. Like people always say it's great for sports talk radio when the team's bad. That about applies to the Eagles. That does not apply to any other team. Bad Phillies, in July, you think a lot of people want to talk about the fact that Jerome Williams had a bad 5 innings and allowed 6 runs. No. Okay. People, all right, yeah, screw it. They stink. Like, I'm going down the shore this weekend, buddy. What more do you got for me?
Right.
And even bad Eagles loss Monday, a lot of people tuned in. Bad Eagles loss where people don't think the team's going to be good. Do they show back up Tuesday? It's like, all right, potentially. But we like to talk about the potential more than we like to talk about the end. And part of them losing is what does it do for the potential of this team? So I would say that winning teams usually breed the bigger umbrella for listenership. And I think that would be that's one of the best things the Union have going for them right now, just that they're, again, so freaking good right now.
Yeah, really good.
What is the toughest MLS name you've had to pronounce on the mic?
That's a good question.
That's a really good question. Trying to think. I'm trying to go through because Cincinnati. I don't think Cincinnati did it. There was. Who was it?
There we go. You had to look it up. That's when you know it was
It's
tough.
funny while he looks it up. It's funny because Dave did a fantastic job when Frankfurt came to town. I'm hearing him dish out these German accents. I'm like, please. So like I've seen his pregame sheets and his little board. He has unbelievably prepared.
Was it Orejano?
Orejano got me. That was. It's also for me. It's never really about the necessarily the pronunciation as much as it is. If I screw it up the first time while I'm like going through names, it's about getting over the mind block.
Yes.
Of like, you screwed that up. Are you going to be able? Because there are names that aren't that difficult. That sometimes I'll be sitting there like I have to like hit better. Ender Enchanique.
That's a good one.
It doesn't sound that difficult. And I forget what I said at the beginning. And I was like, and Seba looked at me, he's like, and I was like, I had it in my head. So every time I said his name, the game's happening here in front of me. Every time I'm saying his name, I'm turning to Seba now looking for validation. It's like
giving you the whole
just say it. Like I'm very bad at just say things confidently and it'll work out for you. Because there's a lot of broadcasters that's the way. This is the way I've decided your name is said, and I'm just gonna confidently say it, and it'll sound like I know what I'm doing. I don't like that. It's your name. I should be saying it right. So if you throw me for a little bit, the little insecurity pops into my head of like, did I get that right? And I'm looking at it separate like, help me out here.
Well, I'm sure that applies for your last name. I'm sure many people mispronounce your name just because of that E at the end, right?
It's the unnecessary E. I've gotten the dude like it's Ray Dunne. Like I'm done. Like but then now it's are you related to Livy? I'm like, all right, man. Like,
you're like, yeah, that's my sister. She got the genes.
Yeah. I get it, man. You're on TikTok. Like, I understand. Makes sense. Like, no, I'm not. And also, there's an E on the last name.
That's hilarious. Well, listen, again, Ray, fantastic conversation. Really, really happy you could join us. Share some of your plugs, anything coming up that maybe you want to share with people, especially Union related, and any match you might be covering.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm doing the in the booth for the home games. I'm producing inside the booth now with them, which is going to be really cool. Again, just love being up there. It is hilarious to me. Also, just like because growing up here, like soccer to me at a young age, like when the Union get here, Seba is like that was soccer. Like that was I was like, oh my god, like Sebastian too. When they said I was calling the game the first time, I was like, like. I remember this is a funny story from the first time I called. We get on the phone Friday before the game. It was May 2024. So it was a Friday night before. Dave was down doing the ACC track championships. And I know they had done an extensive search to find, they had been down the depth chart where like, it was like, okay, we know this guy's done soccer in the area. Like he's done some college things. Let's give him a shot. And I was all right, great. And I just have been like, all right, part of me was like, am I gonna do this? Can I do this whole thing? I get on the phone with Sebastian, and I guess the word had got back to him that I was a little nervous about the whole thing. And I'm not going to try and do the French accent because I'm not able to do it. He says to me, he's like, "You leave the soccer to me. You call the game. We'll be all good." Like, okay, sounds
That's
good.
fantastic.
And he's been nothing but a joy to work
Yeah.
with. In like every sense of the thing. Like when he said that, I felt the weight of the world come off my shoulders. Like Seba believes in me. He has no reason to believe in me. He doesn't know who I am. Great. And so working with him, I'm excited to be, obviously work with him, Dave, Shane, and the whole crew that they got going on there. But like Sebastian's been one of the funniest things. Like I drove him to Wildwood Crest after the game against Cincinnati. We landed. We were both going down there for Labor Day weekend. It's like he went from like this, and he still is that. We make fun of names there on the ring, but like he's been one of the most down to earth, awesome people. So I'm looking forward to working with them in the booth. Getting to study everything that Dave does and work with them. Marty Dickerson does a tremendous job engineering for them. I'm excited to get to work with that whole crew for home games the rest of the way. And then for me, right now, 10 to 2 every day on the Fanatic. I'm hosting the interim. We got. I'm right now the guy there in the middays and until anything happens. So still doing that. I got some ESPN Plus soccer stuff coming with Temple over the next couple weeks.
Nice.
Some games I'll be on, and then November 3rd, the world turns into overdrive. I do our either Eagles pregame or postgame for the station. It'll be Monday through Friday on the show middays with the surrounding Eagles coverage, with the women's basketball games on radio. So traveling around with them as much as I can. So all the women's games, the men's ESPN Plus games, and then a couple more things kind of cooking in the works right now that we'll see what's to come. That's more of a if you care to stay tuned, stay tuned. If not, you might see me on a screen that you don't anticipate at some point. But
Nice.
yeah, I got my head spinning right now. So this was a very relaxing hour for me to hang out with the two of you, just get to talk about. This was fun. This was not work for me at all. I'm a little disappointed we're at the end here.
That's awesome. Well, listen, we'll keep an eye out for you and your work. And again, thanks so much for joining us, Jose. Of course, I have to ask: do you have anything coming for MLS? Any interviews that you have for Union coverage?
Nothing. Thinking about some stuff here at the tail end of the business end, I guess, of the MLS season. Trying to find the time. I'm going to the West Coast here for my own personal job, my full-time job. So it's becoming more and more difficult to find, time for the for the part-time gig. So more to come, I'm sure.
Awesome.
Can I ask where on the West Coast? I'm nosy here.
What's that? Where?
Where on the West Coast?
I'm going to be in LA for 24 hours, San Francisco for 3 days, Seattle for a day, and I might be in Vancouver for a day before I head back.
Damn. Okay, you got a whole world tour lined up for you.
People that follow know that I go out there quite often, and when I go, I go. I'm a dad of two, so like if I'm going to make my way to the West Coast, I'm really going to stretch it. So, and I have a great partner. My wife is awesome. She's on board. So again, when I go, I really do go.
Absolutely. And listen, you mentioned Vancouver, Jose. The Philadelphia Union traveled to Vancouver in a pretty massive match for Eastern Conference standings, Supporters Shield standings. That game is at 9:35 on Saturday night. We will be staying up extra late that evening for our typical Union post-game show. So check us out. Grab a cup of coffee if you need to at probably midnight for our post-game show. Otherwise, this is AAT Sports Network, our Across the Pitch show. For me personally, I'll probably be doing some Villanova coverage come November for college basketball again. If you've been following my stuff on Twitter, I love the Big East. I've been doing college basketball stuff since 2020. So I think I'm going to dive into Villanova specifically this year. Check out some Temple games as well, right? I can't not go now. I have to, and see where Dave Leno is as well for college hoops. But again, thank you all for joining us today, and go Union, go Birds, and everybody else. Have a great day, everybody.